Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. How you doing? It's Big P here. You know, don't you? You know. You know, we're the channel that says it as it is. You also know that all you fucking boxing lot, you're all watching, aren't you? You're all not making out you are, but trust me, I've got all your attention. Because if I aren't and you get in my fucking way, you're going up on a billboard. Ha ha. Today I'm joined by Julian. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. End of a long day. Ready for a chat, pal.
Yeah, balls deep then. We'll go straight in with Billy Joe and Eubank. Billy Joe wants him, he wants 5 million, £160. He's back. 9 month in wilderness. He wants Eubank. What do you think, Julian?
Well, first of all, Billy Joe Saunders, everybody's entitled to ask for whatever they want. Whether or not you're going to get it or whether or not you deserve it is another thing. And I think Eubank probably thinks he's got unfinished business with Saunders. Saunders sees that as a massive fight, but also as a pension payout. You know, I'm sure he views it as a one massive payday. You know, I can whip myself into shape. You know, I can beat the guy again, and that's me done with boxing. That's absolutely fine. But from a fan point of view, I'm personally not that interested in it. I think I'm not suggesting that Eubank could be too much for him this time, because Saunders is, or he was, a world-class fighter. And I did say last week on your show, Russell, I viewed Williams as domestic level, stroke European level, and I viewed Eubank Jr. as fringe world level. Nothing happened on Saturday night to make me change my view. So I totally get why Saunders would want that kind of money. I don't think he'll get that kind of money, by the way, and I don't think the fight's worth that kind of money. But nothing ever surprises me with boxing now, nothing at all. I mean, but he'll have to lower his expectations somewhat for me.
I think, look, Saunders is worth £1 million. Eubank £1 million. Get at it.
Yeah. Saunders active, fighting regularly. I think he's a little bit too much ring craft for Eubank.
Way too much. He's super skilled, isn't he? So look, Saunders behaves like a dick outside boxing, but let's not get it right. Let's not get it wrong here, whatever. He is in the 10 out of 10 bracket for skills, and he's off the chart.
Saunders is a brilliant fighter. I remember watching him as an amateur, just superb. And then obviously
people were mesmerised as an amateur by him, weren't they? And Frankie Gavin as well. Let's not forget.
Him and Gavin were two brilliant southpaws, and they were just fantastic. And Saunders went, at least he went the traditional way, didn't he? Went the British, the Commonwealth, the European, and it was just such a shame that he got to that level of WBO champion, and then he just became an inactive fighter. But I never doubt his skills, and it was always one of those fighters with Saunders I would pay to watch, because forget the outside of the ring stuff. It is what it is. But I do like to see pure boxers, because, as a coach, I would look at Saunders and some of the things that he did in the ring. When he was on song, that was when he was on it, and I'd think he looks absolutely fantastic. And I watched Eubank at the weekend, and it was good in parts, not so good in other parts. But some of the wild things he was doing, some of the shots he was missing,
the wild hooks he were throwing, geez,
it was absolutely bizarre. But I thought he'd win on points. I think the knockdowns surprised me. I'm not sure why they did, if I'm, with hindsight. But Saunders in absolute shape, on fire, I think beats Eubanks. But it's one of those, isn't it? You can't whip your body into shape and be inactive for so long and expect to perform. And I think that was one of the problems he had with the Canelo fight. Whilst he might have never beaten Canelo, the inactivity, you could see the tank just running down after 4 or 5 rounds. And Canelo didn't put him under immense pressure in the first half of that fight. The gas went down. But Canelo putting you under pressure or putting it on you, that's a million miles away from Eubank Jr. putting it on you. People will say, well, it was a close fight last time, but I make it a 50-50 fight. Cheeky of Saunders for asking for 5 million, but they always say, don't you, ask for twice of what you actually will prepare to take. So if he's asking for 5, he's probably prepared to take 2 million, 2.5 million for that one. And listen, you and I can say what we want. Oh, it's a load of bollocks. It's this and that. Ultimately, people are paying in a week and a half's time for Carn Brook. So people will pay for Eubank and Saunders. People will pay for it.
Would you pay to watch Conor Benn versus Eubank?
That's absolutely bizarre. What I found about Conor Benn's statement was, you keep telling us, you know, you're all about, you want to become a world champion, and then you're throwing out fights like that. So do you want to become a world champion, or do you want to become really, really rich? So the Eubank fight would deliver him a hell of a lot of money, but he doesn't even look a big welterweight to me. Conor Benn looks quite a small welterweight. He's got a small frame. Why would you do that fight? I mean, what Eubank now is, whatever we think about Eubank Jr., and I think my point is, I still think he's a fringe world level fighter. He's a big name and he's very watchable. And there was, Sky was saying that they did over 1 million views at the weekend. Now, for Sky views now, and for, you know, for these packages that we see, over 1 million views is a big number. So it's proven that Eubank Jr. is very, very watchable, whether you think so or I think so. People recognize the name, don't they? And people recognize the name Conor Benn, but that's just such a stupid fight. Eubank Jr. doesn't need to drop down to, what would he want it at? 155, 156?
I mean, 157, it might happen.
It's a pointless fight. And what I will say, whilst I think Eubank Jr. is probably fringe world class, maybe he's 8th or 9th best.
He's Euro class, isn't he, at the moment?
But I don't even think Conor Benn's that level. So even
Conor
if
Benn's struggling to be British class, isn't he?
Yeah, even if they'd been the same weight and they were both welterweights or both middleweights, I still think Eubank Jr. would beat Conor Benn anyway. I've not seen him.
Doesn't he? Runs over it.
Yeah, it's just a fight, and these guys are all about making as much cash as they can, and that's fair enough. And like I said at the outset, you're entitled to ask for that. You're keeping, like I said to you weeks and weeks ago, it's about name association. They're just putting the names out there with anybody else who's a big name. Keeps them relevant. It keeps all these. Keeps everybody talking about it. You and I are talking about it now. IFL are talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. So guess what? He's done what he intended to do as Conor Benn. He's not even fighting right now. What is he out in 6-7 weeks? And again, his name is up there as a headline. And this is something that David Haye used to do. Every time when David Haye was in retirement, and he's always been consistent, every time Joshua would fight and win, or Fury would fight and win, David Haye would throw his name into the hat, and it kept him relevant. And it's brilliant PR. It's annoying, it's nauseating. And Conor Benn, that's all he's doing. But he needs to be working on climbing that ladder and getting himself towards a world title or whatever it is he decides to go for.
Do you feel that Conor Benn should have gone the traditional route, Julian?
I would always send a fight a traditional route, but ultimately Conor Benn fighting for British titles, I mean, it's just not lucrative for them, is it? You know, yeah, I mean, you and I would love to have seen him with Congo, McKinson, Jenkins, whoever. We'd have loved to see him fight for British titles, to see if he's the real deal, to see if he's at that level, because right now we don't know. But ultimately the numbers don't add up for them. And it's one of those. I get to the stage, Russell, that I'll watch Conor Benn when I know he's in a real, against a test, against someone who's live and someone who's winning record and somebody who's young and fresh and hungry, because they're throwing McKinson to the wolves, aren't they? They're not throwing Benn to the wolves. So McKinson's got Virgil Ortiz, and they're not put Conor Benn in with Virgil Ortiz, have they? So it's McKinson's not a big name, so Eddie or whoever can say, we've given him his shot, we've given him his chance at a big fight, he's got a great opportunity. But they wouldn't put Conor Benn in with Virgil Ortiz.
No, they won't. Yeah.
He'd get wiped out.
Pardon?
He'd get wiped out. Ortiz would just fucking wipe him out. He'd take Conor Benn out. He'd destroy him.
Would you put Conor Benn in with David Ivanishin if you were David Ivanishin's trainer, Julian?
Well, they would love that fight because Ivanishin won't be earning paydays like he would get for fighting Conor Benn.
Yeah.
And I'd have to make Ivanishin a favourite for that fight. I think Conor Benn would beat Jenkins, by the way. I think he'd beat Chris Jenkins without a problem. I think he'd be too powerful for him, too explosive. But I think he'd struggle with Ivanishin. And I think McKinson would be a fucking nightmare for Conor Benn. It wouldn't hurt Conor Benn.
He'd be swinging all night, wouldn't he? Actually,
Yeah, he'd be pivoting and touching him all night. Yeah.
Oh, it'd be all that all night, and he'd be not getting anywhere, wouldn't it? And I think, to the same extent, I think David Ivanishin walks through him.
Well, he's just he's physically in a different place to Conor Benn, isn't he? So
Neil Marsh has unearthed a gem there, hasn't it? Really, I mean, it's a pity that the kid's not from around here, isn't it? I mean,
well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem, is how often's he fighting and who's really pushing him. So that is the problem, because we've had good fighters who are not from the UK, who fought in the UK, but they've not been fighting that often. It's all about branding, isn't it? You know, I have my days, Russell, you know, where this stuff just annoys the hell out of me. Then I have my days where I'm like, look, fighters can do what they want. It's up to them. They're the ones taking the risks. We've got a choice, haven't we? We're entitled to feel dissatisfied with it, but ultimately we can switch off if we want as well. That's an option that we've got.
Yeah. Okay then. Well, moving on from that, we wish obviously Conor Benn all the best, David Ivanishin, Josh Kelly, all them in that weight category. But
absolutely.
Moving on from that, Dillon White's the WBC mandatory, so they're saying it's been called after 44 months, is it apparently? Whatever, they can spend as much as they want on it. We've not heard from Dillon White, but Frank Warren won the purse bid, Julian. What's your take on all that and the silence around it, and Fury trying to push it and there's nothing coming back from other team? What's your story on that?
Initially when we spoke about this, I thought the fight will happen. I put it out there, so Fury and White will happen. Then last week we had a catch up and I wasn't so sure, and I was thinking, oh, who knows? I still think the fight will happen. I think Dillon White's just playing a game. He's not quiet because of arbitration. I was thinking, is he quiet because Eddie's whispering in his ear saying, don't help the promotion? Is he quiet because he's been negotiating his own deal direct with Warren and the promotion, and there's a bit of tension between him and Hearn? Or is he quiet because Dillon White's just doesn't want to get, once he starts on social media, Fury will just beat him down every single time, won't he? But I'd like to think that Dillon White's quiet because he's focused on training and he's literally just got tunnel vision. He's waiting for a day. He's in the gym. He's already planning his sparring, and he's focused on what's going to be like the biggest moment of his life. And I just hope we don't get a pull out. I hope we don't get him for the second time in his career turning down a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world, because he'll never be forgiven for that. And he'll never be respected, and he likely won't be back in the mix again just for pulling out. So I'm like crossing them. I'm just do it. Just get yourself ready, get in there and give Fury a fight. And you know what? Even if you don't beat Fury, you can still put on a performance and you can still put your name up in lights. But who knows? The one thing that was mentioned in Eddie Hearn's recent interview in IFL was, you can see, can't you, with Eddie, so it's a slight move on, but Eddie's stung at the moment, isn't he? He's kind of wounded, and he was having a pop at them about editing certain interviews with other promoters and other boxers, etc. And I thought that the whole thing was interesting, and they was asking Eddie Hearn about how many buys do you think it'll do, and you could see him trying to put a smile on, and that for me has been the most interesting thing out of all this, has been watching somebody who's going global, game changed. I'm going to change the face of boxing. I've dominated Britain. I'm going to dominate world boxing. And you're seeing this, the silence is deafening now, isn't it? And you can see Eddie Hearn, he looks sickened right now. He looks
He went from a fucking dinosaur to a damp squib.
Honestly, he's somebody who's.
Okay.
You talked about this when you talk about his book, and you said he's never faced adversity. So Eddie Hearn's always had what he wanted in life. Clearly, always had what he wanted, and that's fine. Listen, if I can give my kids what they want in life, I'm going to do the same as his dad. But you have to have hard lessons in life, don't you? And you have to have knocks.
Listen, mate, let me tell you something, Julian, right? Listen, I don't even think I've told anybody this. I'd never had adversity in my life. When I was a kid, I used to tell everybody to bollocks. Yeah, some fuck off, bollocks. They were like, no, what's he coming out with age 9? Nobody could control me. Everybody could see where we're heading. Like when I was in Borstal, they changed name to detention.
Young offenders, whatever.
Same sort of thing in mid-80s. When I was doing porridge there, my mates who I grew up with were sending me letters from geography class and stuff like that. What I want to make is that Eddie Hearn's never overcome adversity. I didn't think I could when I went in there. I was like, oh God, this is like my worst fucking nightmare. How am I going to get over this fucker? But as human beings, we adapt.
We do.
Clinton Woods told me that, I once spoke with Clinton Woods at length about, I saw Clinton, when you're getting punched in the head and you're in ring. And he's like, yeah, and you keep getting whacked in the head. Well, how do you cope? And we spoke about the Crawford Ashley fight. As you know, Crawford's a pal of yours, he's from your area.
Massive puncher.
Crawford set about him, didn't he? He was getting knocked out, wasn't he? And this was for British, Commonwealth, European title, and Dennis had got him a WBC #1 ranking with it. So this is as good as it gets. This is you beat Crawford Ashley, you get Roy Jones.
You're there, yeah. You're
going to get paid. It's like the Mayweather of the day, innit? And this is Dennis at his best. This is where I give Dennis fucking got it. You can't give him any more credit than that, can you?
He got his fire against the pound for pound king of boxing.
Fucking hell, fire,
Brilliant management. Brilliant management.
But Clinton were I've been it's an hard fight, isn't it?
Well, psychologically, it's just, knowing that, a bit like when Sykes was going to fight Broner and it didn't happen, but Clinton Woods will have known, and deep down in his heart of hearts, he was always a dedicated fighter, a hard fighter. He was good at everything, was Clinton Woods.
That world champion over 3 years, you
exactly. Well, Clinton Woods was.
You think then, though, that Roy, putting Clinton in with him then, you think Dennis should have waited? Was there a right time to do it?
Well, he'd have never beaten Roy Jones, but I don't know. You know Clinton, I don't know Clinton.
Well, Clinton beat Glenn Johnson, and Glenn Johnson iced Roy Jones.
Glencoff Johnson was a good fighter, but Clinton, to me, always looked to have a massive frame for a light heavyweight. I don't know if he made the weight comfortably or not, but he was a huge light heavyweight, was Clinton Woods.
Massive, man. We're fucking you.
Fucking giant of a guy.
Clinton had been a cock, he'd have been a 12-incher.
It's a bit like Crawford Ashley. I mean, how Crawford Ashley got down to 12 stone against Michael Nunn. He must have been a fucking zombie in that fight. To get
what he got for that fight? Fucking pot noodle money.
Terrible, that, isn't it? It's.
Leaves
however,
but leaves a bad taste in my mouth. That
it does me. But the flip side of that is, he can say that he went in with if you look at who he went in with, Virgil Hill and Michael Nunn.
Beat Virgil Hill.
I can't remember the fight actually. It was not that fresh in my memory in terms of the scoring of it, but I just remember the fight with Nunn, and Nunn had it was a really loose southpaw, and he used to whip that left hook under the rib cage of the orthodox guy, and he used to catch him under the right elbow with that left. He used to swing that left in. He did it with Frank Tate, and I just remember Nunn going to Crawford Ashley's body. And Crawford Ashley would have known he was dead at the weight. But I do think though, when money, we always talk about fighters this day and age who avoid everybody. But if you look, no matter what, like Brian London and Richard Dunn, you can say what they want. They might have not had good money, they might have done, but they went in with Ali. Just to be able to say that you fought Ali, for me, that's why I get frustrated when fighters don't take chances. Because as a boxer, yeah, you want to keep your health. You want, health is wealth. You want to look after your family. You want to earn good money.
Like Kell Brook could have fought Manny Pacquiao, couldn't he, when he went WBO #1? I
just don't know why that fighters who are so competitive. So if you think of Kell Brook and you think of all those fighters, when they're amateurs, they're massively competitive. They go in the elite ABAs and they know they're coming up against the cream of the ABAs. They get on the England squad, the GB squad, and they know that they're fighting the cream of the world boxing. And something then happens to them when they go professional and they start to get well paid. That competitive nature, almost, they lose that to some extent. And then they start avoiding fights and taking easier fights. And I understand it's business, but just for one night, don't fight us for one night.
Yeah.
Want to just test themselves and said, you know what? And this is what Sykes said when he got the fight against Adrian Broner. He said to me, Jules, look, this is a absolutely true story. Gary said, you have your little moments, like you said about Clinton and Jones. Gary said to me, look, we both know against Broner, it's a good possibility I'm going to get wiped out. He says, we both know that. You can look after me in the corner. I can keep an eye on things in the ring. He says, but I just want to test myself against the absolute best in the world. And wouldn't you want to do that as a fighter? It's just, I just don't know why people wouldn't want to do that.
You know what? When I look at it, this is how I look at it, right? Do you think that the years have changed? You know why? I've been sat and had breakfast and been out on piss and heard stories about when Clinton went over to spar Ola Clemenson and he were icing world top 15 guys. They were putting them to kip. They put one to kip and he ran over to the ropes and he went, you fucking Woods next in this fucking ring. And Clinton at the time was British Commonwealth European champion, WBC #1, trying to make a name for himself. There were Dennis there, Dennis's dad, Den. And
right.
They want to put, old man, but they want to put any bollocks. And Clinton were like, fuck it all. And Clinton went in there and held his own against him. And then Clinton ended up fighting him as a pro, as you know, knocked him out, didn't he?
Yeah.
So we have to give Dennis. I know I did Dennis out lately, but people say, oh, you don't work here if you take him out now. Because the pool of boxing's shit for him to pick from. But let's go back to then. What Dennis did then were master strokes, wasn't it? Master strokes, wasn't it, Julian?
Brilliant management, and he got the best opportunity for his fighters, didn't he? And I guess now Dennis is up against massive operational outfits in Queen.
Hellfire, then he won.
How does the guy get a look in without investing massive money? And ultimately what it boils down to is this, right? I know you mentioned Dennis and white collar, etc. But Dennis doesn't have the pick of the cream, does he?
No.
So if anything, what Dennis has to do, he has to have a better eye for spotting talent than Eddie Hearn does. I mean, I've said before to you about Eddie Hearn. I don't believe Eddie Hearn has a great eye for spotting talent because it needs waving under his nose to say this kid is GB.
Mick Ennis is statistically the best spotter of talent, isn't it, over the last 15 years?
Well, it has to be because he's got kids who haven't got massive amateur pedigree and taking them to world titles.
20 year, isn't it?
20 year.
2002 class of 2002.
Steve Wood did exactly the same, didn't he? So Steve Wood took Terry Flanagan and Josh Warrington to world titles. I know both those guys.
Steve Wood, Mick Hennessy. You throw Neil Marsh into that mix, and maybe Steffi Bull into that new gen sort of like finding talent.
Well, Terry Harper we give Terry Harper stick, but Terry Harper came from nowhere, and it's a skill, isn't it? Matchmaking's a skill. Developing fighters as a coach is a skill. Knowing when to push and when to pull, that's like absolutely vital. So I would give the props to all those guys you've just mentioned. We always believe in balance, don't we?
Yeah.
And look at the job they've done with kids. So, for example, you're Eddie Hearn, you've just signed, whoever is signed from the the recent Olympics. Is it Yafai? He signed Yafai, yeah? So Yafai, for a start, he doesn't work, he won't work for a living. I'll be amazed if he has a job. So he'll be a full-time pro. He'll be surrounded with nutritionalists and coaches, assistant coaches.
Oh, his head will be on fire, mate.
Yeah, everything. So you get Josh Warrington. Josh Warrington used to work for a living. He used to come to the gym with his dad, Sean, to the gym I had with Mark Early. And he'd come to the gym having done a day's work. Terry Flanagan had done the same. You've heard all this, they come for sparring. These guys are fucking knackered and they get to the gym and they're training. So how good are the fighters and how good are the coaches and the people looking after those guys we've just mentioned from still to become a world champion? And how poor are some of the other guys? Because if you've got a GB kid and you can't transform into at least a world-class fighter, it doesn't say much about you, does it?
Listen, you know all these trainers, right? They're not trained. Listen, they're masquerading as trainers, but they're not fucking trainers. They're cheerleaders. They're told what to do. And these fighters that are strutting about saying this and that, because I've been with Team GB set up, get fucking fighting people in your first 5 fights then if you're that good. Because they all want padded records.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You didn't see, I mean, I know Lomachenko was an exception, but how often have we seen recently on the MTK shows, we've seen these Kazakhs come through. Oh. And they're matched tough from day one because they've got massive experience, a 27, 28-year-old, they're turning pro, and they're fighting kids who are 10-1, 10-0 on the debuts and second fights. And we're still getting some of these GB kids wrapped up in cotton wool. I mean, if you look at Anthony Joshua, I mean, you know, I've talked about his lack of development throughout his career. Some of the guys they were bringing in for Anthony Joshua, it reminded me of bloody Frank Bruno. This is an Olympic gold medalist, and you're bringing in these guys who are just falling over the first time it hits them, and you've got the commentary going absolutely nuts. So, yeah, I think development is massive, and so if I was Eddie Hearn, he might do this, by the way, but I'd be having advisors out there. I'd be having like talent scouts, just like you do with football. Never mind the kid who's just won the ABAs. Never mind the kid who's won the GBs. What about the kid who got robbed in the ABAs, who's only been boxing for 3 seasons? What about he's obviously a precocious talent, but Hearn and these other guys, they have to have it under the nose to say this guy's got a massive pedigree. I'll give you an example. The one that they're really building up at the moment, and if I go on record, I hope I'm wrong, by the way. So the one DAZN and the Americans are building up right now is Mark Castro. So Mark Castro, he won 16 national titles from a junior. He won pretty much everything as an amateur boxer. I mean, 16 national titles is massive. I've seen 4 or 5 of his first 6 pro fights. I don't rate him that much. All right, he's got the pedigree, and people say, how can you not rate him? He's won all those national titles. He's too easy to hit. He's too overeager. And I can see why he's won those national titles, because he's somebody over the 3-round distance who would be just well suited for the amateur game, a little bit like Audley Harrison in a different sense. So Mark Castro, I don't think somebody who's going to make it all the way. When I say make it all the way, I'm talking about becoming an elite world champion, you know, in the breath of the De La Hoyas, etc. So I don't think that kid will make it. The point I'm getting at, the beating the drum because he's got all these national titles. So these guys, I don't believe, have a real eye for boxing. I don't believe Eddie Hearn has a real eye for talent. He has an eye for what he thinks is he's marketable. He's got a big following, and he's GB, and he's got a big amateur pedigree. But what about the Terry Flanagans and the Josh Warringtons? What about these kids?
Josh Wales,
what about these kids? Why aren't we investing in some of these kids and developing them? It's not a level playing field, and that's the issue that I've got now. You've got 99% of the boxers out there. They might be good enough to make it, but they're never going to get an opportunity. They're never going to get looked after. They're
not chatty on Twitter.
Yep, and they're never going to get a sponsor who makes their life easier, so they don't have to get up and work in a factory 12 hours on the morning shift, and they can't make training. So they're never going to have that full opportunity that these other guys. So where are the talent scouts in boxing, really?
They're fucking in on this, though.
None at all, mate. And it's just, do you know what? Matchroom could say, we've produced this many world champions. And I'd turn around and say, well, the talent that you've fucking signed over the last 10 years, you should have produced 3 times as many world champions as you have done. You've no credit for me for getting an Olympic gold medalist, putting him with the best coach, the best sponsors, the best nutritionist, the right fights, and you get him a WBA regular title, and then you say it's another Matchroom world champion. You don't get no credit for me from that, because you should be fucking doing that. You get credit by getting a kid from nowhere who's got a losing record. Let's see what you can do with him. Let's see what all these coaches can do with a
Sam
kid.
Eggington, they got him with a losing record. Though they did train, they got him smashed up, didn't they?
Yeah. That. God, that's another thing. I do worry about that kid.
Okay. Matchroom had Luke Campbell, gold medalist. He was tipped to do this and that. He was going to be a big dog. All they ended up with were a Commonwealth title. So what you just said there, Tommy Coyle ended up with a Commonwealth title, but they signed Tommy Coyle and Luke Campbell at different stages of their career. So does that give us the yardstick about what Matchroom are about?
I think it does, absolutely. And it's, all that glitters isn't always gold, is it? And I think I keep repeating the point, but it's such an obvious thing to do, isn't it? To sign the cream of the amateur game. That's not difficult. You've got more money than anybody else. You've got more coverage than anybody else, more exposure. Just these guys are going to, well, the word jumping, I think people start to jump towards Sky now as well, and maybe Queensbury. But you're signing the best talent. And guess what? Anyway, while we're on this one, you signed the cream of 2016. And I said this the last time we spoke, Joe Cordina and Joshua Buatsi. Why are they not world champions right now? Because Cordina, for example, that kid's incredible. That kid's got some seriously good skills. Why has Joe Cordina not won a world title right now?
No personality.
And that's you've answered it. That's exactly it. Because they sign them, they've got the pedigree, and then they realise they're like, I know what I'm going to do with him. He doesn't sell that many tickets. He can't headline a show. So they just sideline them, don't they? They should release them from the contract and let them go with people who want to believe in them. But will he ever get there?
Same with other kid, isn't it? What you just said. Buatsi.
Yeah, Buatsi. Yeah. It's just one of those things, isn't it? And I don't know. I'd want to know if I'd invested in somebody as well, to the earlier point about domestic fights. If I was Buatsi, I'd let my ego go, put my ego to one side, and I'd work with other promoters, because I'd want to test him as well. Let's find out if Joshua Buatsi is as good as people are telling us he is, because 5 years on, what have we got? Forget the unbeaten record, and some smart ass will email you and say, what's he talking about, Buatsi? And he'll list all his belts that he's got, which you and I know are nothing whatsoever. They don't mean anything at all. But what has Joshua Buatsi, and this isn't digging him out, it looks like he's talented and he's got a good toolbox. But what has Joshua Buatsi done in 5 years?
Nothing. 6 years.
Nothing. 6 years. It's like it's madness, isn't it? Really. It's if I were him, I'd be like, I'd be having conversations with my management. I'd be going, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop promising me things. And do you know what? If you can't deliver me world titles, either release me or get me out there every couple of months. At least just get me out there. I don't care. I'll be a chief support. I'll fight on undercard. Give me a 10-rounder international. Get me out there. But they're not even bleeding boxing, these guys, are they?
You think, Julian, that, when you look at Joshua Buatsi, Callum Johnson, Callum Smith, Dan Aziz, who's the rest of it? There's a few more.
Oh, yeah, there's
Jose Burton.
We've got Yard and
Anthony Yard. That's 6, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We've got Lyndon Arthur. We've got some
really good. 7.
You got some good talented light heavyweights there, haven't you? And do you know what? You could put any of those in the mix. And we found that with Arthur and Yard.
Spider Richards 8.
good kids. Any of those could produce different results on any given night. You know, Arthur beat Yard, and then Yard walked straight through him in the rematch. But we got at least we got two fights of two of the top domestic fighters fighting each other. But why is Buatsi not fought Johnson? Why is he not fought Lyndon Arthur? Why is he not fought Yard? Who these guys is beating? I mean, the last guy he beat, you know, the give them the time before, he was a kid who was 14-0. Who that guy had been beating to get to 14-0, I've got no idea. It was absolutely awful. He looked about 60 years old. This is not developing him at all, is it? This is not going to do him any good. You know, I'd rather see, look, the days are gone where Mike Tyson fought 12 times in his first year as a professional and were wiping everybody out. I understand that, but I talk about this every time I'm on your show. Activity is crucial for boxers. You've got to be active. You've got to learn your craft. Look at Roberto Duran. I mean, when Duran fought Buchanan, he was like over 60 fights or something. It was fucking ridiculous. Look at Marvin Hagler when he fought Alan Minter. He'd had over 50 fights. Why does this not? You've got kids now who are just 12-0, 13-0. They get pushed into world title fights. They're not ready. Then they get beat. And then they're damaged, aren't they? And they get exposed. And look at, you know, our favourite, but look at Anthony Joshua now. Oh. I mean, that guy is, I don't care what anybody says, that guy is having a serious identity crisis.
He's washed up after 25 fights.
It's such a, you know, he's not been developed, has he? And what we're going to do, they're going to throw him in with, you know, Usyk again. It's just madness. The game, I guess what we're saying, it sounds like we're being negative, but we've praised a lot of boxers tonight, but the game is upside down, isn't it? It's not a level playing field, it's upside down. And people, I said earlier, to play devil's advocate, I said earlier, if we don't like the product, we can switch off. But as lovers of boxing, I've been involved in boxing, you've been involved in boxing, as lovers of boxing and people who have been involved in it, and license payers, you know, I pay my Sky Sports subscription, etc. I'm entitled to see some quality. So if you look at Saturday night's card, that wasn't a great card, was it? I know they got 1 million views and
4 out of 10.
It was a poor card. I mean, you got the first fight. It's great for those guys, the Robinson and Gill. It was really good that those guys got an opportunity to fight live on Sky Sports, especially Gill, he might go through his career as an opponent, not getting an opportunity like that. It was brilliant for him. But when you've got two novice heavyweights, it was actually in a 6-rounder. Those guys shouldn't be boxing 6-3s. Oh. And you could see that they were tired after 3 rounds. And it was an entertaining fight. It was good to watch. But that was probably the most entertaining fight of the night. You got Clarissa Shields. I mean, her opponent, I don't know what's worse, the fact that her opponent was clearly incompetent and so slow, or the fact that she was unbeaten in 20-odd fights. Who's she been beating? Fucking hell, I don't know.
Okay then, Richard. What do you think about this whole Eddie Hearn, Aaron, Frank Warren, Al Heyman, Tyson Fury, Dillon White, Joshua Usyk, WBC, and all this like merry-go-round, unification, undisputed? What do you think about the whole experience at the moment?
Truthfully, I find it quite sad. Look, there's always been multiple belts. Even when I was a kid, there was a WBA and WBC, but we got to see the right fights. I find it sad. I think the fans are getting cheated, but I also think the boxers are getting cheated, and I don't know. I just look. I'm a historian, you know. I like to look back at great fights, and I'm not naive, you know. If somebody turns around and says, "Not all the fights always got made in your day," you know, I'll be like, "No, they didn't." Foreman was supposed to fight Larry Holmes. It didn't happen for whatever reason. You know, sometimes big fights didn't happen back in the day. You know, Sanchez was going to fight Arguello, but ultimately, more often than not, we got the right fights, and I'm a firm believer. Even though I think the skill set was on a different level in the golden era of the 70s and 80s, I'm a firm believer if we put the best fights together today, boxing will just be on fire. If you forget the politics, forget the bullshit, and you put Ryan Garcia in with Tank Davis, and you have Cambosis against Haney, and have the winners of that two fighting each other, you're going to get like a Pryor Arguello type of fight. You are going to get fantastic fights because you're going to get boxers are competitive, but you've got to make them more competitive than they are right now. And there's only one way of fueling somebody and lighting someone's fire, and that's to say that you're fighting the best guy in the division. So I think boxing's a real mess. We've got too many people involved in boxing who don't truly understand it. We've got people involved in boxing who see it as a money-making opportunity. We've got organisations and Boxing Board of Control and all these guys who they're not implementing rules. They're showing discretion when it suits them and it suits other promoters, but not when it suits other people. You've got things like the IBF and Bob Lee. I mean, they were investigated for fraud bloody decades ago. The WBC have been sued. You've got Gilberto Mendoza and the WBA. All these corrupt organisations, like you always said, it all wants fucking wiping out and starting again, because I think boxing still is a brilliant sport and we've got some fantastic fighters. But imagine going through your career and realizing that you've just actually had 2 or 3 names on your record over a 10, 15-year period. You must look back at that at some point and say, you know what, I wish I'd have taken that fight. I was badly advised. So I think fighters have to stand up and fight.
Don't let me counter, you fucking cowards.
Yeah, because if you look, ultimately, right, if fighters don't fight, there's no sport. You don't have a channel. You know, all these promoters and managers and trainers don't make money. IFL will go under. So fighters need to just stand up and say, you know, bollocks to you, bollocks to you, bollocks to you. I want to fight. And that's why it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Fury and White. Because Fury has said, I want to fight this year. I want to fight in the spring. They said, didn't they? February, March, I'm going to sack all my promotional.
Tyson's in charge of that operation. What he says goes, trust me.
Well, then I want Tyson Fury to stand up and I want him to fight Dillon White. I want Dillon White to be a man and say, I'm a free agent. I've got my shot. I might not be over the moon with the 80-20 split. But right now, if I listen to these people in my ear and these people saying, you're worth 70%, 60%, guess what, Dillon White? 100% of nothing is fucking nothing. So take the 20%, get a 10% bonus for beating Fury, and you can write your own checks, mate. But these advisors whispering in their ear all the time, this is what's wrong with boxing. Like you call it out about strength conditioners. People
nutritionists as well.
Getting involved in boxing who are from other sports or from nowhere actually, and they start talking to fighters. We've all seen it. I've seen it myself in the gyms. They get involved, they start talking to boxers, they start whispering to boxers, they play good cop, bad cop, politics in gyms and all this absolute nonsense. And it just needs cleaning out, a bit like British politics. But how do you do it, mate? How do you...
Say, fuck him off. Say, listen, you sneak, fuck off.
Yeah. That's the thing. Maybe we should, you know, fighters are held down to contracts, aren't they? Like you the boxer manager contract, you know, like the boxer manager, I mean, I'm going on one now, but the boxer manager contract, I pretty know what a manager's supposed to do for a fighter, because I've trained fighters over the years. And then if you look at that manager boxer contract and all the things that your manager's supposed to do for you, get sponsorship, do this, pay for your gym fees, get your sparring, blah, 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 blah. All these things are listed. How many of these things get checked up on by the Board of Control?
Of course,
you've got
the manager doesn't come up on any of them, because I studied it. Because I used to speak to him and say, "Well, what has he got for you with this?" Oh, well, I'd be like, "Well, surely he's broke his contract. It's a fractured."
But they still want 25%, don't they? You haven't done this, you haven't done that, you haven't done that, but you want 25%. And your promoter's supposed to do certain things as well. So contracts seemingly are one way, and all these boxers are just desperate to fight. So they don't know this stuff. And that's why you wonder, you know, all these, like I'll say this, I don't mind saying this on your show. I don't know everything about boxing. I've been around the game for a long time. And as you know, Max, whether he should go pro or not, that's up to Max, is his own man. But Max has been asking you for advice, and he's been asking me for advice, yeah? Just for all you people out there advising boxers, right? None of us have taken a penny. So whether it's the right advice or not, it comes from a good place. But everybody wants to sign all these people up to advisory contracts, to business advisor, PR.
Max does 200 tickets, doesn't he, from White Collar?
Max can do as he pleases, and people might think he shouldn't be boxing and he's poor or whatever. But ultimately, it's advice should come from free. If any pro fighter wants to ask me for advice, I'll give him advice for nothing. I don't want anything. But this is the problem: is everybody wants to put their hand in the pot.
Done a session with you on yesterday.
Yeah, he's got his fight at the weekend, and he was in Leeds for his not lateral floor, the other one. He was at PCR. He was in Leeds for his PCR, and I had the day off work. And look, he just said, "Can you give me a session?" I went, "Yeah, come on then, Max." I had a gym free, my mate's gym, and we just had a mess about, mate. I'd give him a bit of advice. I just thought it might send him on his way to Estonia, feeling good about himself. You know, he'll be going over there with his coach.
I hope he wins, Julian.
I do, mate. I hope it. Listen,
I do.
if anybody jumps in and say, "Oh, he's useless," is this, is that. Well, I'll give you a bit of perspective. Anybody out there, you know, because Max is obviously one of those. He gets people talking, doesn't he? I'll give you all perspective. Yeah, this is a guy who's come from rugby. He's gone into white collar. He's never had any coaching. He's never done any teaching. He's never been shown any basics. I had a look at his training program. It was upside down. It was back to front. All the stuff he was doing was all the wrong stuff. To actually be able to even compete in white collar, to get a couple of victories, even look, it's a low level. We'll never say it's anything else. But to be able to do that, we're having zero input from anybody in your mid-30s, deserves a little bit of credit.
Yeah,
it deserves a little bit of respect. There's nobody running around Max finding out if he's got ability or not.
He's done it on his own. He's chased up and down for sparring, and also he's got to be given credit.
Yeah, he's here, there, and everywhere. And you know what? He's got the balls to do it, and he doesn't think he's going to be the next,
Lennox Lewis
type. He doesn't think that. He just enjoys doing it. He's not harming anybody. And whilst I've always been critical of the white collar and the standard of boxing professionally, and I will not be hypocritical, I'll remain critical about that, I don't have an issue with it if Max stays in his lane. If Max does what he's doing against these kids with losing records, wherever, that's absolutely fine. What I have an issue with is when some manager gets hold of him and starts to convince him to take fights against kids who are 5-0, 6-0 over 6-3s, and he's clearly not ready for people like that. That's what I have an issue with. So I just said to him, it's a dangerous business, Max. I'm not here to tell you whether you should box or not. That's up to you. But if you do, really be careful, look after yourself, make sure you're in shape. And if I can give him a bit of advice, doesn't cost me anything, mate. And
no.
It's one of those things. He's a decent kid. Daft as a brush.
Well, thank you for that having a way with me. I did ask say, look, can you have a way?
Well, you asked me to, didn't you? You said have a little look at him, and I did, mate. So there you go.
Listen, I like Max. When I was lady, like nearly brown bread, he came down a few times from Scarborough.
There you go.
He'd sit here, we'd talk boxing, and I was like, oh, Max, pull me up, I need to have a piss. I don't forget things like that. He gets a bit of stick. He's not argumentative. If somebody says to him, Max, hey, you fucking big fat cunt, you, he'll go, he's not aggressive. He's non-aggressive. I'm like, yeah, he's all right. But listen, he's all right. He's loyal. Listen, his loyalty has been tested by me and Mickey Theo. And let me tell you this. Yeah. He's mustard, you know him. He's mustard, Max.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, listen, you've got to give him credit for that, because I wouldn't have fancied waiting for Shane Fury.
Hey, listen, mate.
My ass would have gone waiting for Shane Fury to turn up, put it that way.
They'd have got tonked all over to come down there that day, and they didn't fucking turn up. And it's another story. But Max, I thought Max will be fucking squeaking in a few minutes. I could see him. I was looking at him. I said, mate, does he look a bit peaky over there?
Mick's seen it all and done it all before. But if you
look at Mick's first rodeo, but Max stood it out. It was all right. Yeah. Listen, 4 hours later in restaurant in Brentwood, Mick were like, is that ravioli all right? Max were like, yeah. Oh, I've got all that's over.
Fucking hell, I bet. Yeah, big Shane Fury. Fucking hell, Max. When they were doing that, I'm thinking, no, Max, no. Don't call Shane Fury out, Max.
No, Shane Fury grabbing Max. He'd be like a pit bull grabbing a poodle, wouldn't
Yeah, I
he?
mean, we're having a joke out. We're just being light-hearted. But you and I both know, you hear from people in boxing and out of boxing that Shane Fury can have a row.
Ain't a bit too much for Max.
He's a fucking beast of a man, mate.
But Max stood on, and Big Shane, if you're watching, you're a big fat cunt. Fuck off.
That's not from me, Shane.
That's not from Julian. So Shane, fucking get gastric. Anyway, moving on. Julian, Dillon White, we've spoke about him and Fury. It's all the bollocks. Yep. Joshua Usyk. If Joshua doesn't fight Usyk next, where does that leave Joshua? And then
first of all, if he doesn't fight him next, I'm good personally, whether it's in line with everybody else on your channel or not, I'm going to give him a pass. Because whilst it might show balls and character to take an Usyk rematch, it'd also be a little bit like when David Price fought Tony Thompson again straight away. He hadn't learned the things he needed to learn in a short space of time, in spite of the mentorship of Lennox Lewis, to ever be ready for a wily old veteran like Tony Thompson. So that was fucking stupid. And that ended David Price's career right there, straight away. So I think I'm going to give Anthony Joshua a pass. And I'm going to say, reset, have some time working with another coach, swerve the Usyk rematch. That's what, career-wise, strategically, swerve it. Get some 10 rounders under your belt. Learn your trade a little bit more. Get 4 or 5 fights over 18 months' time, and then you can come again. And you might have a few more tools to be able to deal with these guys. Tyson might have got bored of it all, dominated and walked away, and you're back in the mix. That's what I would do if I were advising Joshua in terms of career development. If he wants just a massive payout, which I don't see why he would do, because he must be worth an absolute fortune.
200 million is worth, isn't he?
He's got to be worth a fortune, so it can't be just the money. He's a competitor. Reset, go back to the drawing board, fuck what anybody else thinks about you, ignore the pressure from Hearn to put you on a big pay-per-view against whoever. Look at Lennox Lewis when he was knocked out by Oliver McCall. Reset, 4 years without fighting the big guns, slow development, get yourself back up there. And then when you are up there, then you might have some of the skills. I don't think you'd ever beat a Fury or an Usyk, by the way, but you might have some of the skills to at least be more competitive than you would be right now. So I personally give Joshua a pass if he does swerve Usyk.
Well, I fucking don't give him a pass. He's a shit.
I do, mate.
Julian, listen, mate. Like they've been giving him, he's learning that fucking job. He won't belt in 2015. We're 2017, so I think you're way off. It's
fair enough, mate. I'm just saying what I would do as a developer.
Oh, yeah, but where do you think he is as what they said, what they bigged him up as?
Oh, fucking hell. What I said previously, he's probably the 5th or 6th best heavyweight in the world.
Yeah, I think you did, yeah. He's not like Eddie Hearn saying, looking at it, I think he beats Fury, but Fury's the number 1, but I think Joshua beats him. Is that his get out of jail to the answer? Yeah, it's boring, isn't it? I want to see him reset. That's what I want to see. I want to see Joe Joyce active again. Do you want to see the bar active? I want to see them fight. I don't care who, I've said this before, I don't actually care who they fight. As long as they fight regular and consistently, we can gauge the improvement. We can have a look at the improvement or not of these fighters. You know, Dubois might turn out to be, he's a young kid, he might turn out to be a really good fighter going forward. But do you know what? When Shane McGuigan was saying after one fight with Dubois, 6 months, he's back in the mix and I'll put him with anybody, that's just fucking stupid. That's not developing a fighter. Put him in against somebody in 6 months' time who's a handful. Dubois gets beat again, and then he's done. He's shot to shit like David Price we just mentioned. His confidence is on the floor. That's not how you develop fighters. Listen, some kids you put in there with anybody quite early on because they're mentally tough and they've got intrinsic boxing skills and ring IQs. Other kids
you bring them along really, really slowly. You can see Dubois is going to take a long time to pick up some basics. He didn't have a massive amateur career. Bring him along slowly. What they're fucking rushing him for? You got to get Joe Joyce out there as soon as possible because he's what, 36, 37. But I want to see, young fighters. Look at Hughie Fury. You talk about Hughie all the time. Hughie Fury has done it the right way. He got pushed quite early, found out he wasn't there then. So he's reset him, hasn't he? He's reset him and he's built him up again slowly. That's what I would do with Dubois. Just because he's been beaten once doesn't mean to say he's not a future world champion. It just means at the moment that they're all too much of a man for him. And I just want to see fighters out. You know, I've been talking, the common theme for the last hour is activity. I just want to see fucking fighters active. And if it's a boxer who's greedy because he wants 500 grand every time he fights, well, then you're fucking ruining your own career. Take half that, take a quarter of that, take 50 grand, which is what I said to you, another one. This is what I said to you about Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury, stop talking about YouTubers and this and that and the other. We just want to see you in what you should be doing right now. He's having 4-rounders and 6-rounders against Eastern Europeans or tough old British journeymen. Get the rounds in under the belt. And that's the only way you can learn and the only way you can develop as a fighter, by being active and getting the rounds under the belt. I don't care who people fight.
Yeah. I think that Fraser Clark's approaching 31 this August, around that, not 36, so you might be wrong on that.
Yeah, Fraser Clark, he could be, but he's another one, isn't he? It depends where you've come from. If you've come from that elite podium squad and you've been fighting in the World Series boxing for a couple of years, I don't know.
He has had 10 years. He has had 10 years up here at Sheffield, though. So
he doesn't need that. He doesn't need like some of the other fighters go slow, does he? He doesn't need like we're talking about. I'll mention him, but again, Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury had 10 amateur fights. For somebody who's been around boxing as long as Tommy Fury's been around it, at 18 years old to have 10 amateur fights, it's madness, isn't it? You know, you a lot of your good amateurs now are 60, 70, 80 amateur fights. They've been in the championship. So if Tommy Fury's only had 10 amateur fights, you can't be rushing him at all. You've got to bring him along really, really slowly. But it's not developing him, putting him out there twice a year. Got to have him out there 6, 7, 8 times a year.
Yeah. Okay. A lot's been said about the IBF rankings in the last couple of weeks regarding Ergovic. They went down from 15 all the way down to number 1, and not one of them was signed to fight him. Do you feel that these people should be penalised for refusing an IBF eliminator? Or
drop them from rankings.
Pardon?
Drop them from the rankings. Drop them.
Or what? What do you think?
Yeah, I'll take them out. If you're not prepared to fight an eliminator, you get dropped from the rankings. You've no business waiting around, see if you're going to get a voluntary. Just waiting there begging like that for some big fight to happen. Get out there and earn it. And if you're not prepared to fight other contenders, get out of the rankings or get out of the sport, actually.
Ron Lyle didn't have to fight George Foreman back in the day, did he? He could have just waited for Ali, couldn't he?
Yeah, they all could have waited, but they used to fight for the right, didn't they? I mean, if you go back to the early 80s in boxing, again, he's off again, McGowan, but they used to have the NABF title and the USBA title. So
NABF, yeah.
That's right. And for those NABF title fights, that was seen as quite prestigious, like the British title. And you got some really big name fighters fighting for the NABF title because people used to fight for the right.
Oh, he fought for it, didn't he, a few times?
Exactly. It's a fantastic title. And that's what I don't understand. If you look at, look at Tony Simpson. Tony Simpson paid his dues. He got defeats on his record before he fought Marvin Hagler. He beat Alan Minter, former undisputed middleweight champion of the world. He knocked out Alan Minter. He beat some fantastic fighters coming up. He'd lost as well to the likes of Finnegan 3 times. Tony Simpson then fought.
Finnegan's did him, didn't he? 3 times.
Yeah. And what Simpson didn't do, he didn't wait for a shot at Hagler. He fought Dwight Davison in a final eliminator. Dwight Davison was a real handful, a real useful American fighter. And Simpson fought Dwight Davison, beat him, and then fought Marvin Hagler. And then when he got beat by Marvin Hagler, he had time off, and then he came back against the 32-0 John Collins. These are fighters who were taking risks, and these are fighters who were challenging themselves, not waiting for world title fights. Make it happen. If you want a world title fight, you got to earn it, just like Marvin Hagler did, and just like all those guys we've mentioned. But we have a culture now, don't we, where you get to 15-0, 16-0, and you just sit around waiting for some kind of fight to happen.
Opportunity.
When did that happen? When did that happen in boxing? That, you know, people had a sense of entitlement that they didn't have to really go out there and earn something.
It never did it? It's just only recently, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be a generational thing. We talk about the millennials and Generation X and Y and all this kind of stuff. It could well be a generational thing. It's like now you talk about mental health, but it's very sad, but you hear of people who are not getting their A's in the GCSEs and their A-level results, and they're taking their own life and things because they're not used to adversity and they're not used to rejection.
Yeah.
And they're not used to it's a really sad thing to talk about, but they're not used to working hard to get to something. And maybe it's a generational thing might be wide off the mark, by the way. It could be generational with boxers that, guess what? You're a GB kid. You get your rent paid, you get your sponsorship, you get your meals made, a meal plan, you've got a dietitian, a masseur, you've got all these things. All you have to worry about doing is fighting. And then they turn pro and they get these big contracts and lots of money. And it's almost like they have a sense of entitlement. I can fight once every 3 or 4 months. I can pick and choose who I want to fight, or my advisor will pick and choose who I want to fight. And they have a sense of entitlement. And I guess I'm sounding like I'm stuck in the 60s, but 70s. But when did that happen, mate? When did fighters lose the hunger? I'm not talking about every fighter, by the way. But when did fighters lose that hunger and lose that competitive spirit in professional boxing? Why is Errol Spence and Crawford not fucking screaming at their managers and trainers and advisors and promoters saying, I want to fight him, like Leonard and Hearns boxed in 1981, September? Why is Errol Spence and Crawford not fucking ranting and raving and demanding that they fight each other?
That's one of the biggest mysteries in boxing, isn't it? Why they're not at it and why Tyson Fury and Joshua are not at it.
It's such a shame, mate, because so what if Fury would have beaten Joshua, Joshua would have beaten Fury? You're best to fighting the best. And then look at Thomas Hearns. Just mentioned that. Thomas Hearns got beat by Ray Leonard. He wasn't heartbroken. He didn't fall to pieces. He was 22-year-old. He came back at light middleweight. He had some warm-ups and he got back in there. He beat Benitez. He destroyed Duran, fought Hagler. Hagler knocked out Thomas Hearns. He didn't sulk again. He came back in with 21-0 James Schuler for the NABF title, ironically, in 1986. And you know where I'm going with this, don't you? These guys got beat, and getting beat didn't fucking end them. They didn't fall to pieces like Anthony Joshua in front of our eyes. They got back in the gym. They got back on the horse, and they continually just went out there. And this is why we have a legacy of great, what we call really truly great historical legendary fighters. And I wonder how many truly historical legendary fighters we're going to get from this current generation of boxers.
Well, I personally think that Joshua's just jacked for good.
Yeah,
I think he's done.
He's in a ridiculous situation.
Yeah, I think he's gone. I think he's just said, you know what, I'm done. I've got enough money. I could be wrong. People are, okay, you're freaking bad prediction. Look, I think he's done. I don't see anything inside him that says that he wants to do Usyk in.
Well, I hope you're wrong, and I bet you hope you're wrong, because, you know, if you're wrong,
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, what it means is if you're wrong and I'm wrong, it means there's still some testosterone and pumping in boxing, doesn't it? It means that Joshua's going to show you, and he's going to show everybody else that he's not finished, and he'll go out there and he'll take Usyk out and he'll do whatever. Well, we want that because we don't want boxing to be as predictable as it's become. It's fucking predictable. I want you to be wrong. I make predictions like you do, and I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong about Fury just being way too much for Dillon White. I hope Dillon White beats him, and then they have a rematch, and then it's a fucking great series of fights. we need the unpredictability back in
4
boxing.
months, 4 months, Julian. They activated it 4 months ago. Usyk Joshua rematch 4 months ago.
But what
That's
they're
a
not
long
realizing,
time. That's a long time.
I say what they're not realizing, but they, of course, they realize it. They just don't care. You're not just, people are forgetting, like, Usyk won that fight, so he's the champion. But by Joshua, do I, don't I, should I, shouldn't I? By him pissing about and not deciding if he's found the right coach yet, if he wants to make that move yet, he's just stalling Usyk's career. You've got a guy in his mid-30s. What about his career? What about Dubois' career? What about Joe Joyce's career? What about Hughie Fury's career? While all these guys are deciding if they want to, if they don't want to, and they're just all pissing about and waiting around and deciding who's on the left-hand side of the bill and who belts it for and who gets the most money and who gets this purse split. All they're doing is they're just delaying. They're putting boxing on hold. They're putting people's careers on hold, and they're slowly but surely making the fans feel disenfranchised from the sport because people are switching off. They really are switching off.
Yeah. Okay. We've seen a few interviews in the last few days. Eddie Hearn's gone into full PR mode, saying that Dillon White's been silent because that's what he's about. Frank Warren's come out, said, look, the 10%'s been paid to WBC, the fight's on, and the contracts are in negotiation. It's nothing to do with Eddie Hearn. Do you feel that Eddie might be on rack now?
I feel Eddie Hearn had aspirations, so he came into boxing, and whatever you say about Eddie Hearn, boxing wasn't in a good place 10 years ago when Matchroom started putting on these big shows and made them arena shows. Boxing was in the small sports halls for title fights on Sky. I know because I was involved in some of those. Or the boxer I worked with he's done a good job. But what's happened, like anybody else, as we said, he never faced adversity, and he felt he was outgrowing Sky and he was outgrowing British boxing, and obviously he got in bed with the Zone and he's saying things like, he was saying things like game changed, globalization.
We'll take over and all that.
Gonna take over everything.
Hashtag the takeover.
And what Eddie's found is a little bit like my mate said, like Oasis, who didn't quite crack America. Just because you can conquer Britain doesn't mean to say that you can conquer America. And you see that with so many different vehicles. And I don't think Eddie Hearn thought I could just walk in there with my millions and my brand and my everything else. And he thought it was going to be like really, really not easy, but I think he thought it was going to be further on than he is now. Now, if you're, the Zone's obviously owned by investment bankers. If you're a shareholder and you're an investment banker and you've put billions or millions into the Zone, you're not a boxing fan, you're a businessman. These are businessmen and they want a return on their investment. So when Eddie Hearn went into the Zone, he will have had a business plan. You present to the board of directors, you present to all these chairmen and the shareholders, and you present a business plan. And part of that business plan will be, I'm going to deliver Anthony Joshua, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. I'm going to deliver Canelo Alvarez, undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. He's got all these things he was going to deliver. And what he hasn't even delivered yet, he's not even delivered one pay-per-view show on the Zone. Not one. So if you're one of these investors now, and Eddie Hearn knows how business works, you're starting to think, where's the return on my investment? All right, you've had your first financial year, you've bedded into it. Now, we're in FY23 now, starting from March. This is how business works. Where's the return on the investment now for the Zone? Where's the big, it's a subscription model. Where's the big return? Where are the big name fighters? I'm not talking about in the US, because there's a bit of a business model established over in the US and in Europe with the Zone. But in the UK, everything you promised in the UK, where are you in terms of that? And the news that the Eubank fight will have got over 1 million hits for Sky, 1 million views for Sky at the weekend. That will have crushed Hearn. He knows about stuff like this. He'll put a brave face. Absolutely. You can see, he'll always be a multimillionaire. He'll always be massively successful, but he thought he was just going to walk in to that North American market and become a big fish in a big pond. And they've all not realizing, you know, the Al Haymans, of course, they're just giants, but the likes of Bob Arum and Lou Diabella, and these guys are fucking boxing people through and through. You're not going to knock these people out of positions. They've got long-standing agreements with these massive, you know, Showtime and all these kind of networks.
HBO and that.
Massive, massive, massive things. It's like you thought you could just walk in and you could just smile, that handsome smile, and you could just, you know, walk into boxing and just dominate the US market. And you're finding right now, you're losing world champions left, right, and center. Your main man is one defeat away from being absolutely done in the sport. So he's turned into a bit of a nightmare. And I think as you see Eddie now, he had such a fantastic relationship with IFL. You know, it was a case of you scratch my back. You know, IFL grew as Matchroom grew as well. I know they worked with other people, but that there was a real link between those two guys. And IFL now, they're effectively becoming more impartial. They're working with Sky, they're working with Top Rank, they're working with everybody. And you could see his interview with Umar, I was becoming so fractious and so, he was smiling through gritted teeth, and you can just see the man's under pressure. And for probably the first time in Eddie Hearn's life, things aren't going how he expected them to go. And I wonder at some point, he's reiterated again this week, he'll be out of boxing by the time he's 50. And is he so short of options that he's having to work with Jake Paul now? You know, he's thrown his lot in with Jake Paul. Is this what he dreamed of? And is this what he promised the DAZN investors 2 years ago? I think not. And
well, he's 43, Eddie.
Sky,
so if he's got 7 years left.
He's 43. Well, I was one of those people who thought 12 months ago when the news came out, where does Sky go from here? Now, okay, the shows aren't great right now, but they're starting to build that traction, aren't they? They're starting to become also as a destination for Olympians to go with them. You know, Sky, it's a massive, massive platform. If you're an Olympian and you sign a contract, what platform do you want to work on? It's the equivalent of ITV, isn't it? In the heyday in the BBC, you want to deal
Sky, aren't they?
You want to go with Sky. It's a proven massive, massive platform, and you want to go with Sky because they do everything better. By the way, all this production quality, we're going to own our production at DAZN. Your production quality is not that good, mate. It's poor. The app is quite poor, actually. You know, sometimes it buffers, sometimes the picture quality is not great. Those little 3 and 4 minute videos that they do on DAZN, it's garbage. I've stopped watching. I'll only watch it now if there's a fight on. It's really poor build-up. It's poor broadcasting quality.
Yeah.
And does anybody even know it's there outside of the hardcore who'll pay the 8-9 quid? So yeah, long answer, Russell, but he's a man who looks in trouble. It's from a business model, you're not giving the investors the returns that you promised. And what are they now? Still 600 or 700 million in debt at the last report in financial. Not long, mate, before there has to be some improvements or before they'll get another face of boxing.
Okay. Is Bricktop heading for Skid Row, or is he heading for the big, massive revolution and annihilation of Eddie Hills?
I want to get a kick out of seeing Warren come back because he's so resourceful and he's so durable. And that is a guy literally who has been bankrupt several times, or his business has. And he keeps coming back, doesn't he? You can't bloody keep Frank Warren down. So there's something to be said about.
There's something about him that the man in the street has got. People I speak to, maybe I should put it out there more than what I do, but people I speak to say, do you know what, Pork? I'm Frank Warren, me, because he comes back from adversity. He's been shot. He's had dough problems. People ripped him off, this and that. He comes back, and I'm siding towards him. We've got Eddie Hearn there. First blip in his career was when Carl Frampton left him, and trust me, everybody in the boxing industry knows he were in bits over that. And now look at him. We don't hear anything about comebacks. We're seeing like crying off kind of thing and trying to save face. Because eventually, if Joshua gets beat again by Usyk, they've got to crawl then, haven't they, to be back in mix?
Absolutely, they're in a really bad place. So yeah, I'll get.
And I'll be like that, 2-hander.
Honestly, I want to see Warren back at the top. I'd love it. I think it's great. Guess what? If Warren does get back at the top, we'll be shooting him down again, won't we? Because we love to do it. That's what we do. That's what we do. But I'll always listen. Eddie Hearn, yeah, he's got to be clever to get where he's got. It's easy saying.
Listen, mate, he's combed that. Listen, he's got less hair than Kojak.
Less hair than me,
mate. Get into a Keegan Perm or a Terry McDermott. The thing is
with Warren, he really has come from nothing, hasn't he? Just like Eddie Hearn's old man came from nothing.
Listen, Warren's
something about that.
Warren's not behind the door. Let's have it right. He's got about 15 fucking ginger sideburns. He's whipped it over into a Depeche Mode. So look, he's not behind the door as the Warren.
No, I'm only jealous.
Let's have it right.
I want to see. I just want to see competition, and if that's Warren rising above, I don't care.
Rising from the ashes.
He's a character though, isn't he? You know what I mean? It's like I haven't read Frank's book. I don't even know if it's come out yet, but I got given for Christmas. I got given Eddie Hearn's book. I haven't read it yet. It's in
relentless. What a load of bollocks.
But if Warren's book's out there, I don't know if it is, but if it is and someone bought me that, I'd definitely read that one because it's just
called Being Frank.
Being Frank. I knew that they delayed it a few times, so I don't know if it ended up coming out, but he's got a real story to tell, hasn't he, Warren?
Yeah, but what stories has Eddie Hearn got to tell? Because he's not been through any adversity or anything. Never. He's not had any challenges in his life. So how the fuck would a book with Eddie Hearn in it be a bestseller? I mean, I kept seeing people were sending me screenshots. Eddie Hearn's book's a bestseller. I'm like, what the fuck? And it said Eddie Hearn, Relentless, 12 rounds to success or something. Some load of shit. And there's Eddie Hearn there on front page on book. He's never gone through an out in his life. Imagine if Eddie Hearn, Julian, swap Eddie Hearn with me for one day. He's in old prison in the early 90s. And people are saying to him, Porky, or they're saying, Eddie, don't go on the fourth landing. Paul Sykes is up there. He'll knock you out and drag you in his cell and bum you. I were like, fuck having a shower today, then I'll wait a fucking 3 more days to stink me cell out, rather than Paul Sykes fucking knock me out and bum me. Can you imagine Eddie in that situation? He couldn't deal with situations like that.
I can't imagine anybody in that situation, to be honest.
Or Eddie in Chelmsford Prison in Essex. That's a proper Victorian jail. It's I've been in there, Chelmsford. Yeah,
the tough places. Fighters I've trained, as you know, I've done time. The tough places, mate. But it's that thing, isn't it? Eddie's book should be called.
No porridge, Abby Julian.
No, the fighters I've trained.
I thought you done time. You were talking like you were fucking Papillon then.
Yeah, fucking hell no. Yeah, all the Steve McQueen. That's not me, mate. But listen. I'm not going to knock Eddie Hearn because I couldn't do fucking time anyway, Eddie.
Yeah, I fucking couldn't do it. I was like that all the way through. Mom, send me another 10 they're going to kill me.
Not with my bad back. I couldn't do it, mate. I just.
Mate.
I couldn't think of anything more frightening, mate, to be honest, or just I don't know if it'd be the fucking frighten of a guy like Paul Sykes asking me to come and let's go.
I thought it were easy. I thought porridge were easy until somebody said, "Oh, I see him over there." Who's that fucking big lanky streak of piss? That's Paul Sykes. Drags inmates into his cell, bums them, and fucking does what he wants. I'm like, fucking hell. I says, excuse me, mate. Have you got a spare bucket?
Don't think of anything worse, mate.
Fucking hell, fucking. And you know what? Brutal, mate. You know what? When I went out for my first meal as an adult from my 20th birthday
Oh, I bet, yeah.
into Hull, I went down for this was like day after. I was born on 19th of October 1970, so it was a Sunday. I've gone over on my birthday, 21st, on the Sunday. I never forget that me, Dennis Norton from Sheffield, who's dead now, got arrested. So we went for this like Sunday dinner. It was like a bit of cabbage. I thought, well, that don't fucking look cooked. I'm not eating that. And then I got this bone on my plate. And this was before the days of fucking plates, where you got to plug your plate, you know, like you're doing donkey chas and walls. This was like a fucking metal tray. And I'm like, and this prick with his dirty fingernails dropped this fucking bone on my fucking plate thing, metal thing. I goes, there's no fucking meat on it. He went, fucking move along. Like he were a screw. I thought, well, I better keep my fucking gob shut here. So I'm looking at this like metal thing. I thought, what is the fucking bone? I didn't know if it was like a knee shaft or an ankle bone or a wrist joint or what. It was like a bone. And there was a bit of mash there on it, and that little bit of cabbage. That was it. And then we get to pudding. I thought, well, I hope pudding's a bit fucking more entertaining. This slice of bread came out of nowhere with currants on it. And this fucking dude, this dude with fucking beds, he put this fucking slice of bread, and it was a slice of bread with currants on top. Oh, that naive. I went,
what the fuck's that? Fucking hell.
Screw it. Bread and butter pudding, Porky. Fucking move on, Dick. Like that. What the fuck? I'm like,
A bone and a piece of bread.
I went straight back to the cell, got my pen out, got my pen, paper and pen. I went, man, fucking getting a peeling.
I couldn't do it, mate.
Get me out of Dodge.
I'm not going to knock Eddie, mate. I'd be paying protection money.
The appeal fell on deaf ears, man. I went, no, you've got to do your fucking shovel, kid.
Serves you fucking right.
Yeah, well, like that. Listen, as human beings, you fucking
you survive. You have to do, don't you?
Hey, listen, mate. You got to be a fucking sheep or a fucking wolf. You get that fucking moment, you're like, fucking hell, that initial shock, and then you come out of it, don't you? I want to see Eddie Hearn go into that, even if it's only for fucking 24 hours. I want to fucking see it.
Well, the guy's breaking under pressure now, isn't he? Just because.
Hey, well, if he fucking sees me, I'll fucking cover him. I'll cover the cunt in Stella Artois. Listen, mate, I want to see it. Listen, I'm not one of them people that says, I want to see the cunt fucking brown bread, this and that. I genuinely believe that inside here, Eddie's got a fucking good boxing brain and a good boxing art. But I feel that he's got that. He's pulled apart everywhere, and he's got too big for his boots. So I want to see him tuck down a peg, like when he came on scene. I want to see Frank fucking grovel a bit, and we got to see Frank groveling for a long time, and I mean fucking groveling. Eddie put him in the right predicament, didn't he, for a long time. And he knows, he might not want to say it, but listen, he eventually were begging to fucking work with him. And Eddie went, no, fuck off. That's where I thought, fuck you, Eddie. Bring it together and let's get it at it. It ain't about fucking Warren or Earn. Let's let the fights happen. Because we're all missing out, aren't we? Look at all them great domestic fights Henry Cooper had back in day, Julian. Fucking hell.
Jack Bodell and all those guys. Joe Bugman.
He's got 3 Lonsdale belts out, right? Henry Cooper fought all the domestic guys.
So did Finnegan and Minter. Yeah, they all did. Finnegan, Minter. Even like when before Lloyd Hoonigan fought Don Curry,
Do you remember when Lloyd Hunnigan went out there to fight Don Curry? You couldn't even get a bet on that bookies, could you?
Couldn't be. He did it the right way. You know, he beat Sylvester Mitty for British title. Sylvester Mitty were world ranked.
Well, fucking right fighter Sylvester Mitty.
He knocked out Gianfranco Rocky in 3 rounds, who were a genuine European champion, did Hunnigan. And then he beat Horace Shufford, who was the #1 contender in a final elimination.
And everybody was like saying, "Oh, he's a fucking dosser."
Yeah, and he fucking earned his world title shot, did Lloyd Hunnigan. And that's what I'm saying. You don't see that now, mate. You just don't see that. And it's such a shame, because it's like anything. It's you're tearing down the sport of boxing. You know,
where would Mark Caleb be today? Do you remember when Mark Caleb fought Errol Christie? That was probably the biggest fight that we'd had in this country. They were saying for like 12, 13 years. And it was only a British middleweight title, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was the biggest fight that we'd ever had. It was open air or something at the time.
Yeah, well, they had the fight in the street, didn't they? And then they had the fight in the ring, and it was a cracking fight. I think
they went at it like Ben and Eubank.
I think they were both. I think Kayla got dropped, but I think he stopped Christie in the 8th or something.
He's a good friend of mine. He's a good friend of Mark Tibbs's, and they actually speak every now and then on phone every fucking 3 or 4 months. And
good fighter, Mark Taylor.
Oh, fucking hell. Jimmy Tibbs was training. He did brilliant, Mark.
I just remember, I know Harold Graham, fucking hell, he did a number on Bomber Graham, didn't he? But Bomber Graham was a nightmare, wasn't he?
Oh, fucking hell, man.
Fucking nightmare.
And he lost by half a point against Mike McCullum over 15 rounds, didn't he?
That was Mike McCallum, when McCallum was absolutely a serious fighter. You know,
could you imagine Edel Bomber Graham now against Billy Joe or Eubank at 160?
They wouldn't fight him, would they? They just wouldn't fight him. It's that's what I mean. Well, they wouldn't fight him in the fucking day, would they? They avoided Bomber when fighters used to fight each other. Bomber Graham was avoided, so
yeah.
God knows how he'd have gotten today. They've been avoided like the plague, mate. Like the Matt.
Could you imagine Ryan Rhodes against Nigel Benn at the peaks at 160? That'd be a close fight, wouldn't it?
That'd be a good fight. Rhodes was another one of those fighters when he was coming through. Was he at the time the youngest holder of the Lonsdale belt?
He was a teenager, wasn't he, when he British title, wasn't he?
But they rushed him again, didn't they? They put him in against Otis Grant, and Otis Grant at middleweight. They moved him up.
He was like a light heavy one, and Ryan were really a 154 one.
Yeah, that was bad matchmaking actually. But God, it's all coming back tonight, Russell. Bloody hell, yeah. we must sound like a couple of.
I'm a bit of a Ryan Rhodes closet fan actually, because I went to
I liked the Spice Boy. I saw him in Meadowhall once actually. I was with my son, and he said hello, you know, and it was friendly and that. And my son was like, Ryan Rhodes, and it's like, but now you see boxers who are well known. I won't even. If I saw him in Meadowhall, I won't cross over the thing to say hello to him, shake the hand and stuff. But it was a good fight. It was Rhodes.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Julian, about the IBF rankings, and obviously, you know, now for the last 15 months, Ergovic's team have been trying to get him.
Oh, you were saying, yeah, he can't get. I've only seen Hergovic once. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I dropped them from the rankings, mate. But if you're not prepared to fight, but I've only seen Hergovic once, and I wasn't blown away. But you know, he's still, I guess, he was a stellar amateur, wasn't he? He's got good pedigree and he's got good skill sets. But I can't say I was massively blown away with what I saw. But you know, then again, until you've got that level of competition, we're not going to see how truly good somebody is, are we?
Yeah, no. It's
one of them, mate. You got to have the competition to find out how good somebody is. But you can't do what he did as an amateur, you know, not be decent. But
do you feel? Yeah. Do you feel, Julian, that Joe Joyce silver medal, Ergovic bronze medal, and Tony Yoka gold medal? Do you feel that they're kind of like avoided in this current era? Because like it's 6 years on now from Olympics, and these guys and like look to me like they're parked up by all the promoters.
And this is the point, isn't it? What we were saying, because Fury and Joshua and everybody can't decide what they want to do. They're holding up the entire division,
Yeah.
and they're not going to take the risky fights in
Well,
the
can I just
interim.
point out, Julian, that this is the longest ever going back in Olympic history, going back to before the Olympics, because boxing goes back over 100 years, but I think Olympics, it's not quite as long, is it? But this is the longest ever
Yeah.
that the bronze, silver, golds have been, they're like not on track to go for a world title. And they're going to be like, in fact, a third of a generation behind if they do at this rate. It's that bad. Do you feel that that's because of social media or because fighters not wanting to fight or promoters being greedy? Or what's your take on the fact that the 2016 Olympians, bronze, silver, gold, are the most swerved heavyweights in the sport of boxing?
Combination of so many different things, but ultimately it's the demise in the sport of boxing at a competitive level. If you ask me, you know, I'm talking about the best fighting the best. So it's scandalous, really, isn't it? Because if you turn over, you have an expectancy. If you're an Olympian, your expectancy within 3 to 4 years, you're going to be fighting for world titles.
Ali, 1960 Rome, he'd won the belt off Liston before the 64 Olympics.
And that's the thing, isn't it?
3 year, 9 months for Ali, something like that.
It's even more unforgivable now, the fact that those names you've just mentioned haven't won anything when there's that many fucking belts to choose from. You know,
can't get a fight.
Can't get a fight. There's less belts to choose from in the 60s, and they still got fast tracked. I mean, like I said, I've said it before. I look at Holyfield, 84 bronze medalist, 86 world champion. You know, Pernell Whitaker, 3 years he became a world champion after the 84 Olympics. Ray Leonard, 1976. 79, he beat Benitez 3 years. So why are these guys after 2, 3, 4 years in those days?
6 years.
And 6 years.
2016, Julian. We're 2022, aren't we?
But it's not just the fact that they haven't fought for world titles. They haven't even got a fucking proper name on the record, have they? These guys haven't even got one big name on their record.
Maybe Joe Joyce could have the bar on, but who'd he be?
It's not a big name, really, is it? It's a known name. It's a well-known name, but it's not.
Pish, and there's only me fucking screaming about it. So all you fucking pricks who keep sending vileness to my emails, have a look in mirror, you pricks.
Yeah, the ones who, we both get those, don't we? The emails and the messages from anonymous people. I always, what I find a bit bizarre actually when you're talking about that is, it's like anything, isn't it? It's like you're just talking about the state of boxing. You're just venting frustrations like we all are. Do you know what the difference is? What you're doing now and what I'm doing now, albeit we're doing it in a different style, right? Everything that we're saying is what boxing fans are saying when they're watching the boxing. You know, they're sat with their mates and they're going, fucking load of shite. Those guys should. They're saying it, but because you say it on social media, you get death threats. Fucking hell.
It's better than getting a gun put in my mouth saying Porky a month late.
Yeah, you're late with your payments, mate. Listen, we're never going to fix it, but
no,
at least talking about it makes you feel a little bit better. And we always put the caveat in that I'll get frustrated with boxing. I don't know what I'm going to do with my license, but I love boxing. I love it. It's like just having an hour yesterday with Max. I wasn't messing about in the gym. I know what level Max is at, and I'm not active anymore. It was just nice, mate. It was nice to have a bit of a session.
Did you get on with him?
He's sound, mate. He's a nice guy. I give him the same advice as you. I said, Max, you know, when you get over there and you meet this guy who you're going to fight, do you know what? He's just some guy who's probably working to be able to pay his bills, to be able to feed his kids. Don't be giving any of this and fucking that. I said, don't do that, mate. Don't be a knob. Just shake his hand. Be a gentleman before the fight and be a gentleman after the fight. And that's what boxing should be about. It should be a gentleman's sport. I says, it's just some guy like you who's just got the guts to go in the ring and to just live out his dreams. And in this guy who's 0-3, he's probably doing it because it's not easy money. It's nothing easy about going to a ring and getting a beating. he's doing this because he's probably trying to feed his kids. He probably lives in some absolute shithole and has a really tough job, and he works long hours for minimum wage. Be a gentleman with him, mate, and conduct yourself always in a positive light. That's what you should do.
He'll be all right, Max. Okay then.
He'll be all right.
Yeah.
Win or lose, he'll be fine, mate. Win or lose, he'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll finish off on then. Julian, I'm going to ask you a few questions now. I just want you to give me straightforward answers.
Quick fire answers.
Over 4 or 5 seconds. Does Dillon White fight Tyson Fury?
Yep.
Does Anthony Joshua fight Usyk?
No.
Will Joe Joyce get a world title shot in 2022?
No, he'll get beat before then.
Does Joker get his title shot in 22?
Yeah. A couple more years.
Does Ergovic get his title shot in 22?
Only if he gets mandated and the belts become fractured, because I can't see anybody offering him a voluntary. So if the belts split up, probably not in 22, I think 23 again, a bit like Joker. If the belts split up, you could see those two guys fighting for a vacant belt.
If Joker, Joyce and Ergovic, bronze, silver, gold from Rio 2016, if they don't get a title shot in 2023, where does this leave the state of world heavyweight boxing?
Close the door on your way out and turn the light off.
Would you say, Julian, that if they don't get their shot in 23, which will be 7 years after they won the medals, would you say that fundamentally there is a problem from top to bottom with the sport of boxing?
Yeah, massively. If those guys don't get a shot within, like I say, 7 years as a pro, I'll be knocking on Dana White's door and I'll be saying, Dana, you got any gate vacancies in the UFC? And I'll be trying to look at that, mate, because what are you doing if you're not active? It's like having a, I mean, you like me, we talked earlier offline, very quick answer, but you and I love cars, don't we?
Well, yeah,
it's like
cars, yeah.
Yeah, if you had a fucking Lamborghini parked up in your garage, would it stay there or would you take it out and drive it?
I'll take it out.
Well, that's the problem with the heavyweight division. You've got elite athletes who are sat at home texting who they want to fight, and social media, what we're going to do to each other. It's no good. It's killing the careers and it's killing the legacy and it's killing the development.
I actually know people that I've met through other people. I don't want to say the names. They've got certain cars in the garage that have been there 10 years. You know, expensive.
Get them out and drive them.
When I've actually been to one of them's house, I think, you fucking dick. You're a dick. That's my opinion on dicks.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. You're entitled.
The last question I want to ask you: if Joker, Ergovic, and Joyce don't get their shot by 2024, and Fury don't get his shot with Joshua by 2023, what are we to do? What are we to think about this? These people are getting rich. We've got sponsorships. The media all the time, they're earning millions. Will boxing fans eventually go, do you know what? I've had enough. Will that happen? And if it does happen, Julian, will it drive the board underground?
Well, if anybody thinks boxing is bigger than sport and boxing will, you always hear people say boxing will always exist. It'll always exist. It might exist in some form or another, but if people think that people won't switch away from boxing, they're wrong. Because like I said, we talk about this, you know, the change in generations. We mentioned this before. People are switching televisions off now. My kids go home, they go on the Kindles, they go on the apps, they go on the phones or the games or whatever. This generation's switching off certain things. You got a generation of people now, a generation of kids at school who are going into other sports, they're going to other leisure, they're doing other things on an evening. The only option when I was 15 years old, me and my mates, was let's go down to the local boxing club because there was fuck all to do. It's a bigger world now. You know, they're talking about not having boxing at not the next Olympics, the Olympics after. It's looking unlikely. There's a demise in the sport, and clubs are getting, there's lots of clubs out there, but the memberships are not through the roof. They're all struggling. Boxing is so arrogant that it thinks it will always exist, and it won't. It might exist as a really small minority sport, but it's no longer one of the biggest sports it was. Like I've said before, boxing on such an elite level, when it's a big event, people talk about it, people watch it, but that's getting fewer and further apart now. And I think in 20 years' time, it won't be anywhere near what it is now. There's a steady decline of boxing. So if you just turn people off, you turn in a generation, of people off. I work in the greeting card industry, and in greeting cards, what we have to do is we have to think of ways of engaging this current generation. How do you talk to this digital generation? How do we continue to make sales? And lots of platforms and lots of industries are doing exactly the same thing. But boxing's stuck in the fucking mud. It thinks it can continue to fraction the belts, multiple promoters, and it thinks it can continue to pull from boxing and take money out of boxing. But it can't. Eventually, you'll just be
going down. I've got statistics here.
Yeah,
Listen, Rico and that. Rico and Terry and people like that. They're like your 200, 180 like IQ, men to men. They're not
very bright guys, yeah.
Fucking off the charts. Like, we've got statistics here that 18 to 24-year-old is the peak one for boxing. Going to UFC, and UFC is going like that. And this has been since I've met them kids, and they're 20 years younger than me. But if we go back since I've known them about 6 years, they'll tell you, it's all there. It's in black and fucking white. Eddie Hearn? He will know this, because he's massively up on all this. They'll know. They know it's coming.
Listen, I were brought up. My dad and my brother loved boxing. I got into boxing. I boxed, right? My son, who's 13, 14, he didn't give a shit about boxing. It doesn't impress him that his dad trained British champions and he's trained with world champions. He's not interested. He sees it as a load of shite. He watches UFC. He does his gaming. He does other things. He follows YouTubers. He follows all different kind of things.
Kelsey.
Kelsey watches it now and again. Joe's no interest. All my mates, the sons and that, my mates who are boxers or box, their kids have gone into boxing. It's not as big as people think. It's big when there's a big event, when there's a Mayweather event, or when there's if Fury had fought Joshua. There's big events and it's on the news, but the fewer and further apart, and less people are getting interested in this sport. And what happens is, as I said, you've got to reinvent everything. Look, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a final example. Right, pubs. The working men's clubs and the pubs are on their arse. The only way that pubs survive now is to reinvent themselves and get into catering. They have to have a USP. They have to have a unique selling point. Pubs are reinventing themselves, and they're shutting at a rate of like 4 a day or something. It's crazy. So people are not doing the same thing as they used to do either. People don't do the same things on an evening what they used to do. People don't go to the same places that they used to go on holiday now. They go for experiences and all different kinds of things. I work with, like I say, I work in publishing, and I work with consumer insight groups who look at trends, like you said, like Terry and Rico, bright guys. They're telling you, and that people are just getting turned off from the sport. And, when the fighters
Rico told me years ago, this had happened. And I was like, yeah. And I stored it in my head. He was right,
You can see it. Of course he's right. People, when Ben and Eubank fought, I was there at the first one at the NEC in Birmingham in 91, 92, whenever it was. And when they fought, it was almost like the nation stopped.
Well, Nigel, he fought on a Sunday night, didn't he? Against Ben the first time, didn't they? They fought on a Sunday.
Even when he fought Michael Watson in Finsbury Park in the tent, it was alive. It was everybody was.
For a Commonwealth title, the whole country stood still.
People now don't know now, and so I heard that, like I say, 1 million viewers for Sky, and I thought, wow, that's fantastic numbers for Sky. That's brilliant. That's shit numbers, really, isn't it, for a big name
compared
fighter?
To back in the day?
72 million people in Britain now. What, the population's above 70 million or something. And in the day, we had 56 million people. And fucking 18 million people watched Barry McGuigan against Pedrosa at Loftus Road.
Yeah, a third of
That's
population.
a third of the population, but yet just less than 2% watched Eubank at the weekend. How can you compare? We could go on forever, mate, and we probably have done tonight, but there you go.
You know, I was a kid, right? I'll never forget that though. Me, my old man, his uncle, or my granddad. Obviously, I had another uncle there, or great uncle. I had a granddad there and a great uncle, because two brothers married two sisters. You know, my dad's parents and whatever.
Yeah.
We were all there, and I don't know where my mum was. Probably out that way. We all, my aunties and nanas and that. And me and my brother, we're all watching Barry McGuigan, Pedrosa. I was there with cola and my Mars bar and my bag of salt and vinegar Walker's French fries.
Yeah.
Telly, probably black and white back in the day. It was that long ago. And there were nobody on the streets. I think I've covered this on channel. There were nobody on the streets, mate. Nobody. You play football in the day, won't you, on a Saturday afternoon, and you go watch, and you watch Barry McGuigan. Barry McGuigan were like, what were there, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 channels back in there, or maybe we might have had a colour telly then. Well, let me tell you this. They weren't like you've got now, where you've got all these channels and fire sticks and internet and that. Barry McGuigan were massive back in
the day. They were huge, and then he fought.
Even had his own crisps out, didn't he?
Bernard Taylor, and then he fought Danilo Cabrera, and the Stevie Cruz was heartbreaking to watch.
But when he fought in desert, about 130 degrees,
awful to watch. But what Hart McGuigan showed that night, you know, people always.
It was a way ahead going into them last championship rounds, you know, McGuigan. But the heat done him in, didn't it?
And everybody said, "Oh, that's an excuse that, you know."
Well, it's fucking 15 rounds. Have you seen some of these today after 5 rounds?
An Irishman with his complexion fighting a Texan who's used to that heat. You can't compare, can you?
Barry McGuigan's a legend, mate.
In fact, anybody watching now, by the way, you're going to say the video's too long. Watch it in 2 parts. But anybody watching now, get on YouTube and watch Barry McGuigan, Uzio Pedrosa, and that's real boxing. Watch him against Stevie Cruz. You want to see heart and courage. And
do you know what people forget? You know, Pedrosa, he was fighting McGuigan in his 21st defence.
That's right. He'd beaten everybody, and he'd beaten Juan Laporte.
Everybody. He'd done them all over about 5 years.
Yeah, it was fucking phenomenal fight. Him and Larry Holmes had the longest reigns in boxing at that time when Pedrosa was there. He was an absolute fucking formidable champion.
Michael Spinks and McGuigan ended them runs.
Yeah.
They're all of fame. McGuigan's all of fame. Larry Holmes all of fame. Listen, mate.
Different era, mate.
Different era. And you know what?
Different levels.
I'm all nostalgic now. I might have to put McGuigan and Pedrosa on.
We need to have a debate at some point and do it with a millennials.
But you know what I'm not going to put on, Julian? Johnny Nelson against Carlos de Leon in Sheffield.
I mean, the second world title fight I had against James Waring wasn't that much better, really, was it?
All I remember about that is Johnny Nelson being smuggled out of Sheffield with a blanket on his head. And the last person for that to happen with was Peter Sutcliffe when he got arrested in Sheffield. Can you imagine? What? No,
because I used to train with the guy who beat Johnny Nelson in Johnny Nelson's pro debut. Peter Brown, he was one of Keith Tate's pros. Called him Tony. We called him Tony, but there was someone else called Tony Brown, so he had to be called Peter Brown as a pro. And Johnny Nelson lost his first 3 fights as a pro, and one of them was at the Frontier, back the Frontier. And Tony Brown, I used to train with Tony, and he used to go easy on us. He didn't knock us about. He was a good guy from Bradford. And whatever you say about Johnny Nelson, 3 wins out of 16 amateur fights. Johnny Nelson, he hung in there, didn't he? And he learned his trade, and you've got to respect Johnny Nelson for that. Whatever we say about him, he was he didn't fall to pieces, did he? He didn't have it
Listen,
easy.
I'm not fucking easily persuaded. Nobody gave a fuck about the cruiserweight division back in the day. Glenn
No, they didn't.
McCrory pinched an IVF for a fucking weight that they fucking invented. Let's have it right.
Yeah. I mean, there weren't much about in the cruiserweights infancy. There was,
cruiserweights. They were like too big for light heavy, and nobody gave a fuck about them as heavyweights. That's my opinion.
no. Well, that's why Michael Spinks and he never moved up to cruiserweight, did he? Why
How
bother?
did he fuck? He said, "What the fuck do I want to be a cruiserweight for?" It's a load of fucking people that were frightened to death to take a challenge in their lives. That were Michael Spinks' words. I'm not saying Johnny Nelson ain't got no gonads, but it's looking like he's got fucking balls the size of processed peas.
Yeah.
So
To be fair to
right.
To be fair to Johnny, he fought some tough heavyweights out there as well, didn't he? When the likes of Aldis and Rodriguez and that, he fought some tough guys. I'll give him credit there. I just think,
wins Ezra Sellers, who's seen better days.
yeah.
That's the statistics.
It is, mate.
Famous to go dick down to his knees to get loads of minge. Good luck to Johnny, but he was not an elite fighter. That's my opinion. People will say different, but I never had him down as this fucking big elite Roy Jones type. Somebody was saying to me the other day, "Oh, Porky, you're harsh on Johnny Nelson. He had 14 defenses." I went, "Against fucking who? Give me the fucking names of these 14 defenders."
Well, that's the WBO when the WBO was basically a British title. Like Chris Eubank made fucking loads of defences, but apart from Michael Watson, he didn't come up against much quality, did he?
Fuck, man, the fucking
and half of those Eubank fights, he didn't even fucking win, did he? That were matchroom bias scorecards in the beginning, wasn't it?
Johnny Nelson's working on Sky by default. Listen, I ain't got no filter. Johnny Nelson's working at Sky because he's a black man, and that's more or less fucking the word doing around the industry. And Johnny knows that. And the second thing is because he's got a padded out fucking record. That's it. Good luck to him, but don't start fucking talking like you're fucking Holyfield. For fuck's sake. People start getting fucking delusional about the records and all that. It freaks me out, Julian.
I know, mate, but it's where we're at now. It's a sign of the times, isn't it? I mean, you don't want to talk about Derek Chisora's after dinner speaking, do you? Is he doing some tours?
Derek Chisora on Orion Roads 20.
I'm winding you up, mate.
Hey?
I'm winding you up, mate. I knew that would get you.
I've just seen somebody sent me something. Derek Chisora, an evening with Derek Chisora on Orion Roads 26 RR promotion in whatever, Rotherham, Sheffield and that. Who the fuck in the right mind is going to buy a ticket for that? What the fuck is going on?
I think I paid less. I think it's 100 quid or something for the
125 quid. What the fuck?
I got Ray Leonard tickets for 100 quid for fucking VIP.
How much for Holyfield tickets?
Oh, I can't remember. Might have been 70 quid. I don't know. I forget. It was a while ago.
What the fuck? Listen, Ryan, send me a free ticket. I'll come up and I'll be empty, Ryan. Because like 125 quid. It's a bit strong for us fucking DN12 lads, Ryan.
Yeah, it's not cheap, is it?
But we've had a good chat. It's all.
We've had
a good chat. We've right a few.
Can I make a disclaimer? Can I make a disclaimer, Russell? That at the end of TV broadcasts, and it says that the views expressed by blah 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 is not all the views expressed in this program are not my views. They're only the ones made.
You're going into company man mode.
Only the views expressed by myself are my own views, mate. Everything else by you.
Are you going into company man mode, Julian, to save your?
I'm going into my equality and diversity mode, mate.
Listen, what you have to do, you just have to come out and say, "Bleh," and then go, "So what?" And that's it. Well, listen, we live in a democracy. Right?
We do, mate. Freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. There's too many snowflakes out there. Oh!
Well, there are rules around freedom of speech, but yeah, I'll give you that, mate.
But listen, It's always glad to have you on, Julian.
Always good to come, mate.
Thanks for doing a session with Mad Max with the
You're welcome.
Volvo out of a breadcrumb yesterday. I hope Max is okay. I hope he doesn't lose his debut fight in
Me too.
days. I hope he wins.
Yeah.
And anybody else who Julian's mentioned to me, it's his opinions, and if I've offended anybody, I don't give a fuck. Well, that's it. But thanks for tuning in, and
Thank you.
have a great evening, Julian. All the best. Peace out.
Will do, mate. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Speak soon, pal.
Right. Well, that was it. I've had Julian on. Good bloke. I like him. He's not like me in his wording. I just tell it as I see it, because I look at it like this. If I can go through what I've gone through in my life, from should have been at school in Borstal detention centres to all the way into my 30s, I don't give a flying F-U-C-K what I say. And if anybody's got a problem, you can come on Zoom. All right, it's no good me saying, come and meet me, because nobody ever fucking does. But come on Zoom, and then you can meet me after that, can't you? All right, don't be hiding behind your fucking troll accounts, or you pricks and weirdos and general shithouses that have not got the bollocks to leave a comment on my channel with your face saying, "I'll come on Zoom, Porky. Come on Zoom, face the Porkster, you fucking weirdo fox." All right, go and get your sons off and sort your universal credit out. Peace out.